Hey, Rowan here. We Damage We is the channel. Coming at you with another tag. This is a friend sent me this tag and was like, hey, I saw this, you should do it on your channel. And I had seen a couple other people do it, and I was like, yeah, I should do this. So, we're doing it. It's the mid-year book Freakout tag. First up, what is the best book you've read so far this year? No surprise if you've followed my channel, but the answer is Negative Space by B.R. Yeager. I read this book a couple weeks ago, and it just absolutely fucked me in the head. I absolutely adored it. It is a story about a small suburban town in New England that is being plagued by sort of unexplained rashes of suicide, particularly among the teenage population of the town, and various sort of loner, druggy kids deal with this sort of supernatural suicide epidemic through the use of this over-the-counter hallucinogenic drug called Whirl that may be a sort of key to the afterlife or explaining why these suicides are happening. Very good. Very intense. But I highly recommend it. Second prompt. The best sequel that you have read so far this year. Now, I am pretty sure, but I'm going to double check. I'm pretty sure I haven't read a sequel to anything this year. There are some series in my life that I am in the middle of reading, but I don't believe that I have read any of them this year. Other than reading Berserk, which it's not really a sequel. It's not really like a series like that. You know, it's a manga, so it was like an ongoing thing. I need to finish the Broken Earth trilogy. I didn't finish the third book in that. I have read the first two Expanse books, but haven't gone beyond that. I've been wanting to get back into reading My Struggle by Knausgaard. I've got the Testaments by Margaret Atwood, which is the sequel to Handmaid's Tale, but I haven't read that yet. So I've got plenty of opportunities for this to change in the back half of the year, but so far, no sequels. A new release that you haven't read yet, but you want to. Here's one that I put on my TBR recently, because it came recommended. B.R. Yeager, who wrote Negative Space, which I just said was my favorite book so far this year, tweeted about this book, saying that it was really good. Bonding by Maggie Siebert. It's a short story collection. Let me just read the Goodreads description here. Welcome to the new normal. The narrative is inevitable. These books are not taste trophies. They're a novel species of sensory apparatus, a big-ticket item for a dark age, a semblance of the yawning now. We are dragging you toward a thermal intensity, an uncanny nightmare conjured of collective hallucination and puncta of panic couched in hypnotic reveries. In Bonding, Maggie Siebert evokes unreality as visceral experience, situates you in private fears and raging emotion for a free-fall through bizarro humor and hardship, body horror, gore and fantasia, subversion and satire, mnemonic wreckage, and tight-gripped pulp. Shift to clutch. Siebert is the doyenne of the legitimate counterculture, poster child for this season in hell. The ecstasy of mind bursts a blood vessel, and the discomforting is a seductive siren song, calling all crackling auras to desublimate their extremes and take a ride. 12 shots of the unspeakable sublime from the most indomitable force of nature, an erudite zine enthusiast / multidisciplinary icon who lives for the sounds of pages smoldering with fresh ink visions. Here are fascinations, heartfelt observations, lurid, liminal spaces to dwell in. Crumple, prostrate, and let disassociation drive. Bonding is beyond four walls and linear time. It is flesh and blood made hypersensitive to the soul. Don't chasten your appetite for a spiritual revolution before terror is wrung inside out to paint a new cross to the Godhead. And man, I have no fucking idea what this book is going to be about, but man, does that make me want to read it. This is from Expat Press. It's an indie book. I might have to buy this book because I put it on my TBR and then kind of forgot about it, but now I'm talking about it again, and it sounds pretty sweet. Most anticipated release for the second half of the year. I don't really know. I was just talking with my friend Kristen about who suggested I do this video because she was saying, she pre-ordered a bunch of books for the back half of the year she's excited about, and I was like, I don't really know what's coming out. I feel like I don't hear about books until they're like already out usually, and people have read them and are talking about them, but like none of my like authors that I follow have anything coming later this year, so I don't know. Is there a book that's coming out later this year that you think I would like? Holler at me, let me know, because I want to get excited. Biggest disappointment of 2021 literarily. I am gonna. There are two that I thought of that are kind of neck and neck in my brain. So let's just say both of them. The first one is Gutshot by Amelia Gray. Amelia Gray wrote a novel called Threats that I read a couple years ago and absolutely loved. It's on my favorite books list. It's a very hallucinatory sort of nightmare experimental novel about a man whose wife dies, and then he starts finding all of these little notes around his house with threatening messages on them, and he doesn't know where they're coming from, and he doesn't know whether he's going crazy and writing them himself or what's happening. And so based off of how much I liked that book, I got this book Gutshot, which is a book of short stories, and just it was okay. Most of it was like okay, and then there was a couple stories that were like pretty good, and then there was a couple stories that were like pretty bad. But like based off of how much I liked Threats, I was like pretty excited about this book, and it just so that was pretty disappointing. The other one that I found really disappointing was No Longer Human by Osama Dazai. This is a book that a number of people whose opinions I respect have reviewed this book and had great things to say about it, and it sounded right up my alley. It's about a sort of depressed young man in Japan who feels like he's not human, like he's out of step with the world, and he goes through these sort of repeated attempts at suicide and toxic relationships with women and alcoholism, and sort of a Catcher in the Rye / Bukowski, but in Japan kind of thing. And I was like, that sounds like it could be pretty good. And it was just okay. It didn't really, I didn't feel like it had anything particularly profound to say, and the narrator wasn't particularly like, he was neither compelling nor particularly sympathetic. He was boring and shitty, and the shitty things he did weren't compelling. They're just shitty. I don't know. I was really excited to read it because it sounded like really up my alley. I was like, oh, it's about a suicidal, miserly fuck right here. And I also love Japanese art and literature, so I was pretty excited, and it let me down. So those are my two big disappointments this year. Biggest surprise of the year. I'm gonna go with The Sluts by Dennis Cooper. I don't even remember how this book came on my radar. I think it was through Goodreads. And then I picked it up at Majors and Quinn just sort of on a lark, because I saw it and I was like, oh yeah, I put that book on my TBR, so let's get it. And then I pulled it out to read for Pride Month because it's about gay male escorts. And I wasn't like super compelled by the synopsis of it, of it being like a book about gay male escorts. Not like I was put off by it, but it didn't like draw me in. And then I read it, and I read the whole book in one sitting, and it just fucking riled me up and blew me away. Absolutely amazing. Absolutely one of the best books I've read this year. I thought that it had so much interesting to say that was still applicable to our current society, even though it was about the internet and it was written in 2004, which was like the early days of the internet. But it still held up really well. And it was also like really brutal and disgusting in a way that I wasn't expecting it to be, but that I really liked. So yeah, not for the faint of heart, the sluts. But if you're into transgressive fiction and experimental fiction, do yourself a favor. Read this book. It is very good. Favorite new author, debut or new to you? This is kind of tough. I haven't read any like new author that's like new debut. I read Patricia Lockwood's novel, which was her first novel, but not her first book. I had read her poetry collection, Motherland, Fatherland, Homeland, Sexuals, when it came out like 7 years ago or whatever. But authors who I read for the first time that really blew me away, B.R. Yeager, obviously. And then I not only read Negative Space, I also read his other novel, Amygdalatropolis, which was good, but not as good. So he jumps to mind, absolutely. Michel Houellebecq, who I read his most recent novel, Serotonin, which blew me away. And then I have since picked up a couple other books by him that I'm excited to read. So let's see. Yeah, I think those two will be my answers. Newest fictional crush. The only one that really came to mind was Jill from Negative Space, who is one of the three narrators. She is sort of a fairly what you think of when you think of like a sort of stoned goth girl, teenage goth girl. But her sort of nihilistic streak and then her desperate sort of drive to get away from her small town, and then her sort of arc that propels her away from town to college, and she explores her sexuality and sort of has to reckon with the trauma that she's experienced in her life. I found it very relatable, and I really thought that she was a very realistic character. If she was a real person, she was probably the kind of person I would have gotten along with when I was her age. So, yeah, that's my pick. And the newest favorite character. How much can I talk about this book? Negative Space. I'm gonna go with Lou, one of the other narrators, who is a gender fluid, maybe indeterminately gendered person who lives this very sheltered life, but then through the internet sort of is drawn outward. And their relationship with this boy that happens in sort of the back half of the book, where they become sort of obsessed with these magical rituals and protection spells, that involve like masturbating, and I don't know. I just found Lou to be a very intricately nuanced character, and very compelling. The other one that I guess jumps to mind is J.R. from J.R. by William Gaddis, which he's so funny. Just how he constantly won't shut up and interrupts everyone and doesn't know what he's talking about and just manages to create this fiasco through his own childish hubris. Very good. Book that made you cry. The only book that's made me cry this year is Stoner by John Williams, which made me cry twice, actually. It's a very heartbreaking book, and it's the kind of heartbreak that I really could relate to. A lot of sort of the disappointments and mundanity of life. There's nothing like particularly dramatic and exciting about the tragedy in William Stoner's life. It's very relatable. Book that made you happy. Yikes, I don't know. I'm not a big happy book guy. Don't read a ton of happy stuff. I'm going to go with Et tu, Babe by Mark Lehner. This was a book that was very funny and had a lot to say about like fame and celebrity culture and things like that. Stuff that's not like super heavy topics. So yeah, very funny, very good. He is best known for co-writing that book, Why Do Men Have Nipples? That's like in every boomer dad's bathroom. But it turns out he's actually a really good writer of fiction. So there you go. The most beautiful book that you have bought so far this year. I feel like I haven't really been blown away by the physical presentation of anything this year. My favorite cover, probably, of anything I've bought this year is The Sluts. What a great cover. What books do you need to read by the end of the year? The one that I really, really need to read is The Instructions by Adam Levin, which is one of my favorite books. But I read it when it came out 11 years ago, and I really feel like I need to read it again. I just know that like my tastes and preferences have evolved, with over a third of my life having elapsed in the time since I read it. It just begs rereading. I want to see if it holds up. So that's the big one. And I think I might take that on pretty soon, before the summer ends, for sure. I've got this pile of books next to my desk that are stuff I want to get through sooner rather than later, and there's all sorts of stuff in it. Another one that I'm going to be reading soon is Cows by Matthew Stocko. I've been reading a lot of like disturbing literature, and it's one of the heavy hitters of the genre. So I need to get that under my belt, so that I can stand proud and with authority and speak with authority on the subject. And finally, my favorite book to movie adaptation that I have seen this year. Fuck. I haven't been watching a ton of movies this year. I am a pretty big movie guy. I mean, this is obviously a book-focused channel, but books and movies I love and know a pretty comparable amount about. I might even know more about movies than I do about books, actually. According to Letterboxd, I haven't logged a movie in over a month, which is that's true. I think the only book-to-movie adaptation that I have watched this year is Nomadland, which I did not read the book. But I did watch the movie after it won the Oscar. And I liked it. It was good. I appreciated that it was like such a sort of quiet, meditative story. I liked how it sort of told a story of the kind of person whose story doesn't usually get told in movies. I thought that Frances McDormand was incredible. Fully deserved her third Oscar. She's an amazing actress, undisputedly. Yeah, it was good. My favorite movie I've seen this year, though, is definitely Promising Young Woman. So, thumbs up to that one. What else has been good that I saw this year? Under the Silver Lake, that was really good. I really liked that movie a lot. Kid Detective, that was very funny. I enjoyed that movie quite a bit. Psycho Goreman, very funny. And Uncut Gems, which I shamefully had put off for a long time, but finally got around to watching, and that was also amazing. But none of those are based on books, so I don't know why I'm talking about them. Whatever. Anyways, that's it. That's the mid-year Freakout. Thanks for watching, everybody.